Hey guys, welcome to Performance Anxiety on the Pantheon Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mark, and today I'm speaking with guitarist and sometimes frontman Ken Wohlrob. And Ken's never one to sit still, as you'll find out, and during the pandemic, he's been forced, like most musicians, to take a hiatus from his two bands, Eternal Black and End of Hope. So, Ken decided to start another project called Swarm of Flies. It's a revolving cast of members and a completely new way of creating music for Ken. He's released a couple of songs through Bandcamp already, and they could not be more different from each other. Each Swarm of Flies track will be released as a single when it's completed, and you can pick up the first two at Bandcamp already. Follow Ken, Eternal Black, and End of Hope on social media. Follow us at Performance ANX on social media too. And if you like the shows we're giving you, consider buying us a cup of coffee. We'll all split it, promise. And there's no commitment. So subscribe, rate, review, and help us spread the word. Let's hear all the buzz about Ken Wohlrob and Swarm of Flies.
Let me see if this works. Hey, this is Ken Wohlrob from Swarm of Flies, Eternal Black, and End of Hope, and you're listening to Performance Anxiety. I'm going to apologize in advance for Spectrum Cable here in Brooklyn, which means there'll probably be some cutouts.
That's what editing's for, right?
Yeah, but they're notorious for spotty internet. So.
Oh man, I've had a couple people from Brooklyn on, and I think they've all apologized for me, or to me. So yeah, I have been listening to a lot of your stuff over the past few days. So it's
a lot to have to catch up on.
Yeah, sure, yeah. It is. But I do like Doom, so it's really cool for me to find bands like that to listen to. So.
Cool.
So I'm
glad you did.
Oh yeah, definitely, man. I've had a couple guys in that genre on, like Scott Reeder from Caius was on.
I saw you had Buzz on too.
Yeah, Buzz was awesome, man. Scott and Buzz are great.
Yeah. So, and I saw you had Lanigan on. I enjoyed the Lanigan interview.
Good.
I'm a big Lanigan fanatic. Oh. So yeah, that was. I'm enjoying him being kind of reborn.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny because I got a lot of positive comments, but some of the only negative or smart ass comments I ever got was on that one. And one was
really?
Like, yeah, one was like, I don't know where this guy, the host, has been. You know, Lanigan he's toured everywhere. Everybody should have had a chance to see him. I'm like, I had other things to do. I had a family to raise. The closest he ever came when I lived in Alabama was like 3.5 hours away. So my toddlers don't like to stay in the car for 3.5 hours while I'm watching a show. So sorry. So
where do you live at now?
I live in Winchester, Virginia right now.
Oh, okay. So is that western part of the state or is that eastern?
Northwest. So I'm almost exactly 75 miles west of DC.
Oh, okay. So you're almost closer to Pittsburgh and everything.
Yeah. I'd say 2 to 3 hours from Pittsburgh, probably.
Okay.
But I'm real close to DC, relatively speaking. You know, it takes an hour and 20 minutes to get there.
Oh, so. Okay. So you are closer to DC.
Yeah. It's real. It's real easy. In fact, I was a photographer for years, and once we started having kids, I had to get a real job. So I kind of just did photography on my own for a while. And over the beginning of the year, I started shooting some shots for a local DC live music blog right before COVID hit. So I got a couple of shows in, and I was getting my live concert photography legs back, and then rug got pulled out.
Took everybody out at the knees,
It did.
Yeah.
But it helped you be more creative, which I want to get into in a second. But I want to know more about how you got into music in the first place. I mean, was your family musical, or are you the black sheep, being the guitarist in a doom metal band?
No, nobody played music in my family at all. And until really me and my brother, I had an older brother. I'm the youngest of four.
Oh.
And nobody, as far as I know, nobody's ever told me about anybody, uncles, cousins, anything. There's no mention of anybody having any musical ability whatsoever.
Oh, wow.
But me and my brother were of that generation where, my brother was born in the 60s. I'm born in the 70s, where, music became, not that music wasn't important before, but it was, especially growing up in New Jersey, it was that confluence of all this stuff at once.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I kind of grew up in New Jersey myself, so spent like almost 15 years there. So.
Okay, where at?
In Central Jersey, right on the border of Somerset and Hunterdon counties.
All right. So if you're around Central Jersey, you knew Rock and Roll Heaven was down there, and like metal, early 80s really took off, which my brother got really into and got me really into it. While at the same time, we were really into stuff like the Police and punk rock. And so, and you also had the bands that had gotten big in the late 70s, like Van Halen and Boston and all that shit, and Rush. And so me and my brother that was also the other important thing at that time. And it's funny to think about it now, because in the digital age, you have equivalents to it, but it was ease of tape recording.
Oh yeah.
And it's great. I have a Rory Gallagher live album, which has the inner sleeve is tape trading is killing music.
Oh wow!
And the parallels to now are hilarious, but it
That's
was
funny.
At that time, like the music industry was like, all these freaking kids are recording music and handing out. And me and my brother and our friends, it was always like, oh, I got this Manowar album, you should hear this, and they just make a tape, pass it on to you. Yep. And that was kind of the fuel, was and mixtapes and sending stuff back and forth. And also at that time, that's the time of, in the metal community, of demo trading overseas and everything else. And so me and my brother were gross rank amateurs compared to the dudes who had sort of lines to people either coming, sending stuff in through New York, and so they had connections there, or we're actually talking to people overseas. Yeah. And so it was the kids who were into like Venom and Trouble and Creator, and when the first like Destruction stuff came out, those were the kids you were like, oh man, they're in much like we were Maiden and Priest and early Metallica and stuff like that, and Halloween, because you can find that at Rock.
Oh, I loved Halloween.
Yeah. But there were those kids that were in far deeper than we were. And then you realize like, oh, okay, there's subcutaneous layers to all of this here, And so Maiden, Priest, Motley Crue, all of that, all that stuff in the early 80s. Wasp's first album was huge, amongst, Jersey kids. And my brother, big Steve Harris fan, wanted to be a bass player. He found a guy who made a cheap ass $100 bass for him. And so my brother started learning how to play bass. And I'm like, I want to play drums. Had the paper route. My sister's boyfriend at the time had a friend who was selling one of those old Rogers Silver Sparkle kits. With it actually had the cymbal stand that would fall over if you hit it, because it was mounted on the bass drum. If you hit it too hard, that thing would tank over. So you had to tie a shoelace to it.
Oh, nice.
So you had to, until. So I got one of those for $50. Came with the Peter Criss Rock and Roll Over sticker cut just to show Peter Criss on the bass drum that somebody had artistically put there. And I'm like, that's for me. I'm a massive Kiss fan.
There you go.
And that was really it. And we drove our parents nuts learning, as a kid learning drums. Fucking Lars Ulrich is the way to go, because it's so easy. Oh, yeah. And also you have that kid energy of just just play fast. So you had it. Learning Tommy Lee beats.
Oh, man.
Super easy. Yeah. Learning AC/DC beats, super easy. And then you start graduating to bands like Overkill, and Sid Falk and Rat Skates and what they were doing. And you graduate to Kirk Arrington from Metal Church, that first Metal Church album, the drumming on that, and you're like, God damn, that's phenomenal drumming. So that is what I got my sort of musical background on, because I wasn't good enough to play Stuart Copeland.
Well, still a lot of people still aren't.
Yeah. And I wasn't good enough to play Rush, and there was a hierarchy of the drummers in my hometown where it was there were certain kids who could do John Bonham's solos. Right. And you were like, whoa, that kid, he can do the Bonham thing. And you're like, and then there are the kids who can do the Pert solos, and you're like, nah, those are the kids who went to Berkeley, you know, and I was like, I was doing the Peter Criss solos. You know, that's my level. But I could play thrash metal, but I was just like, I wasn't that technically proficient. Good double bass drummer, not so great with the other stuff.
Yeah.
And so that was it. And that stuck with me. I played in bands. After I left New Jersey, I lived in Ohio for a little bit because I went to school there. I played in some bands there. Nothing ever really playing out or going anywhere, but just, you know, playing with friends and doing stuff. Yeah. And then when I moved back east and I moved to New York City, I realized I couldn't be a drummer anymore. Okay. And so that's sort of the chain, and then that got me to playing guitar. Okay. And at that time, that was also the resurgence of stoner and doom in both the States and in Europe. And so you suddenly had, you know, the Obsessed was kind of done by that point, but you had Down had come out. You had Wino had moved on to Spirit Caravan. You had Orange Goblin, you had Cathedral, you had Electric Wizard, you had Sons of Otis out of Canada, you had the Suplex down in New Orleans. And so at a time when metal, other than Pantera, metal was kind of dying out. Nobody really knew what to do. And then suddenly in the midst of this was this really exciting, very energetic sort of return to Black Sabbath mentality that I was so into it and enamored with that. Yeah, it was when I was learning to play guitar, Wino became my guy. Wino became the guy I wanted to play like, and Wino became the guy I went, Jesus, this is amazing that people play like this. And so that's how I got there, which is a really long-winded answer. I'm sorry.
No, that's the kind of answers I like. I love stories. So this whole show's all about it. Yeah. When did you start playing out in bands, out in public? And
really not until 2015. Oh, and really? That was, and that's, so I'm a late bloomer when it really comes down to this. Wow. You know, I didn't start playing guitar until I was in my 30s. Wow. And again, I was a drummer, but a sort of half-assed drummer for most of my life. And there are a lot of folks who do that. Like, there's folks who work jobs and they play, and some are really, really talented, and maybe they play in a band once and then they never kind of go back to it, and that's the way it works. And so I was probably going that way. But then, I just kept playing and really enjoying it. And the more I got into it, the more I kind of kept trying to push it. And at the same time, that was also when you could start recording at home. Yeah. Okay. So I started dabbling in that, and I had some friends that we were working on stuff, and literally these friends were like, one good friend was first in West Virginia, and then he moved to California. And so we were sending files back and forth and working on stuff. And I'm like, this is great, but I realized it wasn't as good as it could be because I didn't have people in a room. And you couldn't just get in a room and kind of work it out. And you didn't have a live drummer, which for the type of music I was playing was like, it needs a live drummer to really give it a soul. And so that was starting in 2014. I started looking for folks. And then in 2015, that's where Eternal Black really came together. Oh, okay. How long? And you guys have put out, 4 albums at this point? You got a live album in there, so it counts. Really, it's 2 albums, an EP, and a live album. But we've worked really hard since that time. Well, yeah, I mean, that much in just 6 years. I mean, sometimes I've had a bunch of people on the show where, for the first 6 years was them just playing. They're not actually, they're out playing covers and they're not putting stuff out. So that's pretty impressive. I think that period prior to it where I'm just noodling around on my computer and learning how to use the software to get a good guitar sound and all that stuff. And because I had spent years just sitting in my living room playing or occasionally going to a rehearsal space with some friends who were in town and playing. And when you're doing that, you're kind of showing off for what, like you haven't seen a buddy for a while. So you're kind of showing off like, oh, I figured out this Obsessed thing. Check this out. Or, oh, look, I got all of like Motorhead's, Limb from Limb down. Check this out. That sort of way of showing off was a way of studying. It was a way of going, okay, how does Lemmy and the guys do this? Or how does Wino and the guys do this? You know, how does it kind of work as a song? And then once you start playing around with software, you know when something's dog shit. Because you know when something's going on too long, and so you learn how to edit. And when you're doing that, then all of a sudden, when you actually have a project, when you actually have guys you're in a band with, it's like, I think that was a good training camp for me to just be able to come in and go, all right, here's a song. Okay. And I think my guys in Eternal Black at first were like, you have the whole song? I'm like, yeah, it's this. And at first they're like, oh, okay. And so we, even before we recorded the first EP, we had enough material for an album.
Oh, wow.
And the first EP was only supposed to be, hey, let's go just put a couple songs down and we can give it to people so we can get shows.
Yeah.
But the guys who recorded it for us did such a phenomenal job. I was like, you had Bandcamp already. You had all these sort of, along the way, these technological things that happened that I always saw a potential of, well, fuck it, let's put it out as an EP. We'll do it ourselves and we'll put it out. And so all of that made it easy for us to move quickly. And so my take was like, all right, each time we'd get together, I would try to have something new.
Okay.
And so stuff would just sort of flow. And then once we had an album, okay, we would kind of stick with that for a while. And then once we had that recorded, I would start on the next one. Like I would just sort of like, all right, I'm and in certain cases, even before we finished that album, we would already be, I'd already have stuff coming in for that band.
So are you the principal songwriter for Eternal Black?
For Eternal Black, yeah. It's me kind of bringing it in and kind of saying, here's the thing. And then the guys, working with me to kind of figure out, okay, how's this all kind of work together? Okay. And then what became fascinating is then, when I found, everybody wanted to play an End of Hope, which was really, finding the right guys and knowing the right guys of like, I had this corny idea of what if Motorhead and Black Flag, kind of merged. Yeah. And I had met Davey Gunner, the vocalist, who was, most people know him from Kraut. Okay. Seminal New York City hardcore band. And Davey's a phenomenal guy, and we'd become friends because his band at the time, Boathead, was playing shows with Eternal Black. Oh, cool. And so Davey and I always got along. Two East Coast Italian shitheads. We just naturally got along great. And we were talking one day. He's like, "Hey, if you ever want to do something, I'd love to do something with you. Just two guys, mutual admiration society." Cool. I just went, "I got this idea. I want to do Black Flag meets Motorhead." And he goes, "I'm in. Let's do it." Nice. And I knew the drummer and the bass player. I knew Dave and Davis, and knew they would be right because they're guys who can kind of step into any situation and do well. Davis, the bass player, plays keyboards too, and he's able to record on his own as well. Oh wow! And Dave, the drummer, went to Berkeley, is this just monster drummer. So I'm like, yeah, I think I can throw just about anything at those guys, especially at the tempos, because you've heard the music, Eternal Black, slow, End of Hope, hyper fast, because it's the Motorhead speed thing. Right, so right. Yeah. So finding them, it was a completely different dynamic where rather than hey, here's the thing, let's figure out where you guys fit in this, the way it works in Eternal Black. It was more, here's the thing, and then everybody starts taking the meat cleavers to it, and we whittle it down. Oh, okay. So what was a 3 to 4 minute song suddenly becomes a 2-minute song.
Okay.
And it becomes way more punk rock just by the editing process of, hey, no, let's do this 3 times instead of 4. Okay, great. Hey, you know what? I don't think we need that part. Let's pull that thing out. And it's 4 guys just kind of having at it and going, all right, let's pull this thing out. And let's get this thing down to, we have a saying, it's like stretch the skin, like get all the fat off the bone.
Yeah.
So it's literally the most taut bit of a song there.
Okay.
So that when you hear one of those songs, you don't feel like, oh, they could have cut this.
Right. So you're doing basically addition by subtraction.
Yeah.
Or in car, I'm a car guy. In car terms, what the hell, the dude who started Lotus, adding lightness to it.
Yeah.
So you're making it better by taking things away.
It's the Thelonious Monk thing. It's what you don't play that's really important.
Yeah. Okay, we can keep it in the music genre if you like. That's fine. We don't have to go to cars. So now, does your rig change at all between the 2 bands? Because they're very different, but it's still you playing. And because I saw you throwing out a few riffs. You had your Les Paul, you had a Marshall head, your orange, your orange cabinet there.
Right.
Does that change much between the 2 bands, the setup?
The amps stay the same, and the thing I'll use live is it's an old 79 Marshall JMP head that has served me quite well. Okay. And then an actual original Sun cabinet which probably when you saw those clips, I'm standing in front of it, so you don't see it.
Okay, yeah.
But then when I'm playing in rehearsal, I actually have 2 Marshall heads, so also an old 73 Super Lead, and I got that orange cab, but I also got a Sun cab that my buddy in Pittsburgh found for me. And he was like, hey, some guy's selling this. It's $450. Do you want it? Oh, it's like original Sun cab. I'm like, absolutely.
Yeah.
And my buddy was coming out to see me, so he threw it in his van and he drove it out to me.
Damn.
Those stay the same. The pedal board pretty much stays the same, with the exception of I don't really use a lot of effects in End of Hope. Okay. It's Black Flag meets Motorhead. A little bit of echo here and there, maybe some phaser, still a shit ton of wah. Yeah. But not as much atmosphere there, more attack there. Okay. The big change is the guitars. So the Les Paul is Turn to Black. Now for End of Hope, it's an electrical guitar company, one of the aluminum guitars. Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. So it's Kevin's version of the Travis Bean TV 1000, I think was the original model, and this is the EGC 1000S. Oh, cool. So it's great. It's double cutaway. The aluminum necks he makes, they're super thin. Yeah. So they're always you can just get your hands around it. You can also, because it's double cutaway, you can get way up on it, so I can do different things with it. It's heavy. It's like, yeah. Even though it's chambered, so you can take the back plate off it, and it's completely chambered out. But because it's aluminum, it's still heavy as hell. So when most people consider Les Pauls heavy. When I put on a Les Paul now, it feels like balsa wood for me, because the EGC is so damn heavy. But the EGC has, I've never heard pickups like that. It has way more bite. It almost, the sound, even though I'm running fuzz pedals and everything else, the sound is kind of more akin to old AC/DC albums from that guitar, which is great. And I love it. And it's perfect for that band. Yeah. Whereas the Les Paul I use for Turn to Black has so much sustain, and it sounds so thick. That's always been the guitar for that band. That's been for that. So the gear, the pedals don't change because I like the fuzz pedals I've got. I love the wah I got. It's just the way I play changes, the way I attack the string changes, the way I write for both bands change. And again, you've heard the difference, or anybody that's heard the difference between the two. Eternal Black is more about the space in between the notes. Right. End of Hope is more about just the sheer attack. Yeah. But it's also, that band is also about the collective of those 4 dudes and the attack of those 4, the 4 of us together in that band. So yeah, there's so much energy. I've seen a few live clips too. There's a lot of energy in those live shows. We hope so, yeah. And the great thing for me with that band is I only have to do one job. I only have to get up and play guitar. Whereas, Eternal Black, I gotta sing, I gotta play guitar, I gotta be a front man, you gotta do all that. Not that I don't enjoy it. I love it to death. But every once in a while, it's great to just be able to be just the guitar player.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
So I was listening to the latest Eternal Black album, and I got to tell you that I really enjoyed particularly the songs Blow and The Ghost. Those two songs are just my favorites. It's a solid album. I really have been enjoying it. And it came out in June of 2019?
Yeah.
So you've had a little bit of time. What were you doing before COVID hit? Were you guys working on new music, or were you out playing, supporting the album?
We were supporting it, and we were supposed to be playing festivals back in the spring.
Yeah.
So we were going to play some stuff here in the States, and we had shows lined up, and I already had 2 songs written. We'd actually played 2 of them live. We had a couple others we had started working on. So, again, the process has always been like, we don't stop working in that band.
Right.
So even that we're out supporting an album, I'm writing new stuff. So when we get into rehearse, we'll play through what we know we need to keep up on for the shows. But it's also like, hey, all right, here's a new one, and let's start working on that, and let's start fleshing it out. And the thing is, we've always played new stuff live in that band to kind of find the right feeling for it and to get used to it. And our drummer Joe is funny. He's always like, I don't really know a song until we play it live. And then once we play it live, I've got it cemented in my head and I can do it. And it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, and also it's the other thing of, it's a little unfair of me to ask them to know it as well as I do, because I wrote it and I'm bringing the whole damn thing in.
Yeah.
Whereas like they're being thrown all this stuff at once. They got to wrap. They still have to, need time to wrap their heads around it. And usually it's not until we really start playing it live for a couple times that we start to see, well, how's everybody responding to it? You start to find the dead spots. You start to find like, this doesn't work here, all that shit.
Yeah.
So we were working, we were proceeding like everybody else, like, let's keep going. And it just kind of stopped because, we have an added disadvantage of Joe lives way out on Long Island.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So for him, we have a decent sized rehearsal room, but not decent enough to avoid COVID.
Right.
And there's no, it's in an old industrial building. So it's like, there's no ventilation in there.
Yeah.
We can't, you just can't get together, and that's the thing everybody's going through. It's not unique to us, but it sort of put a complete stop on everything. Now, the one thing that could happen is I've pretty much written the rest of the album. So I've got all the songs that I think we can put on the album done, including lyrics, including how I think the flow should go, how it's all like on Saturday, I'll go down and play through them and then sing along and make sure I've got the lyrics down, because they're still rough on some of the lyrics. So I'm treating it as if COVID's going to end tomorrow. I should be ready.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now,
that's the way I look at it. Like I get that from like Henry Rollins and Black Flag and those guys, where they're like, they used to practice with the air conditioning off in the room to try to simulate what a shitty club would be like and all that. And I have that kind of working class mentality of it. Like if I'm going to be good at this, because again, for Eternal Black, I got to sing. So I got to get comfortable with the song enough to sing and not look at the guitar while I'm singing and like,
I don't know how you do it. I don't know how
anybody does it. And I don't do it well. And I know I have great friends who do it far better than I do. And I'm always in awe of them because, I watch them do it and I'm like, they're not even looking. They're throwing their heads around. Yeah. They're animated. And I'm like, it takes me a while to get to that. So
yeah.
And also when everything's shut down, everything stops, my mentality was like, all right, keep working.
And that worked for you because you're still putting music out. You've got a new, I guess they want to call it a project, Swarm of Flies.
Right.
Now, I want to know a lot about this because I've heard the 2 tracks and they're extremely different.
Yeah.
But they're both killer. How did the idea begin? And was it your idea from the start?
Yeah, and it was the pandemic, and I always try to be careful about how I explain this, because I don't want to make it seem like I'm bashing on anybody. But when the pandemic happened, the first thing everybody started doing was like, hey, let's make cover tunes, and we'll put up videos of us playing cover tunes together. And some have been really, really cool. Like some of the stuff Charlie Benante's doing is kind of cool.
Alex Skolnick and all, yeah.
Yeah. Like some of it's great, but my brain was like, well, why aren't they just making new music? Like, if you could do that, if you could record a cover song at that quality, and the quality's pretty damn good because everybody's doing it at home. Like the SOD cover, like the guys in SOD getting back together and playing, I'm like, oh, this is phenomenal. And the one Mike Patton's on, I'm like, that's great. But at the same time, I'm like, but why wouldn't you just write a new song with Mike Patton? Like, my brain went there. My brain was like, everybody's shut down. There's not going to be any shows till 2021 at the earliest.
Right.
Both my bands are shut down. So other than being able to do some pre-production and work on songs, like we can't get together in a room. So other than sending files back and forth, there's not a lot we can do.
Yeah.
Same time, I'm kind of like, I'm like, I have a lot of guitars. I like playing those different guitars. I have a lot of different ways I play, and depending upon the guitar, I'm going to play a different style and all that.
Okay.
So, it changes what you do. So I was like, maybe I should reach out to some folks and see if they want to do something.
Okay.
And part of it also came from back to what I said earlier. It was, I realized I hadn't recorded at home since before Eternal Black.
Right.
So 5 years or so. Software changed a lot.
Yeah, a lot.
The interface has changed. So when I started looking at what are the interface, I was like, you know what? I'm going to be at home a lot because I could work from home, but I'm going to have a lot of free time.
Yeah.
Let's maybe upgrade the interface and let's see what the software is like. And once I started doing that, I was like, oh man, like I can get a plugin that simulates the same Marshall JMP I have down at the Space.
Right.
It's not exactly the same, and I know it's an illusion. I know it's not quite as good, but it's pretty good.
Right.
Like it's good enough to make you go, "Fuck, that's great."
Sounds pretty good.
Yeah. Like, and it's pretty cheap just to get that. So it's like, okay, I'm going to start tinkering. And as I started tinkering, I'm like, I know a lot of people who can record at home. And I also had people who were already like posting on Facebook or doing other things and kind of saying like, oh, who wants to work on something with me? Or let's put something together. And all of a sudden I was like, well, why don't I try a song? And I reached out to my rhythm section from End of Hope. And then Earl from Shadow Witch, who's one of the best singers you could ever find. And one of the most phenomenal live performers you could ever see. I mean, the Shadow Witch is such a great band to see live. Yeah. And Eternal Black has played shows with them. We've driven down to Baltimore and back with them, and we love those guys. And Earl being a friend, I'm like, do you want to sing on this? He's like, sure. And
nice.
He sent me back 3-part harmony.
Wow.
On mine all along. So we had the bass, I had the guitar riffs and I sent it to my bass player. My bass player came back with keyboard parts and all this other stuff.
Oh my gosh.
And suddenly you're like, I have a wealth of stuff to pick from. Yeah. And again, taking that Thelonious Monk approach of like, well, maybe not use all of it. Like it's good here, but maybe not here. It's good here. And you start to think about how the layers work together. And then Earl comes back with 3-part harmony and you're like, oh my God, this is a wealth of stuff. And then suddenly you're in a different playground because the other thing, you're realizing is like, okay, the guitar is going to be less important here. And so all my other bands are riff-based, guitar-based bands. I'm a riff guy. That's what I do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's my wheelhouse. But now suddenly I'm a more subservient player.
Right.
I'm a more of a guy who needs to fit in where, the layers of the song and what it needs to be. And my job is more about being an editor and sort of a conductor, as a friend told me a couple of weeks back.
That's a good point.
Yeah, you have to think about it differently. And so then I suddenly had the idea kept growing, and then I'm like, okay. And Swarm of Flies is a joke, pack of dudes.
I was gonna say, I had to learn what find out what what's behind the name. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
Well, it was the fact that I hit on the idea of early on, like, okay, I want to do some different stuff, and then what I realized is, now is not the time to form a band,
right?
But a rotating cast of characters would be really interesting.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
A swarm of musicians, a swarm of flies.
Right, okay.
I was talking to Mike Watt, who has a podcast, and he's like, I figured it out. He was like, I get it. He's like, swarm of dudes. I'm like, oh yeah, that's kind of it. Like, sharp guy. Nothing gets past him.
No.
But yeah, it was from that first song. I'm like, oh, this is interesting, because now it's not about the riff is the thing that everything else sort of locks onto. It's more about how does this all work together, which is what I'm a big Nick Cave fan. I'm a big fan of the Swans.
Oh, yeah.
Hawkwind. So suddenly I'm now playing in that territory as opposed to the Obsessed or Motorhead and the stuff I normally am digging into.
Yeah.
And those bands, the songs are really simple. They can be heavy and they can be very emotional, and they can have an attack to them. But the component pieces are usually really simple and layered really smartly. Right. And so more and more what I learned, like when I got to the second song, I then reached out to Andy from Clam Fight and Eric from Thunderbird Divine, who are also like really good friends. And I'm like, guys, I want you to do something on this. And I realized by that point, I have to be really smart about not sending too much to everybody. So at most, I'll start with just like one layer of guitars, maybe a keyboard. In the case of the Jaunt, I had the backwards drum beat. Okay. Because what's the Mark Lanigan, Duke Garwood album with Animals, Save Me.
Oh, yeah.
That song, there's a backwards like drum beat or at least like a backwards cymbal on it that runs throughout. And I'm like, that's kind of cool. I want to tinker with that. And so I had the beat, I had a Moog part, and I had the guitar riff, and I sent that to Andy and Eric, and also to my bass player, Davis. And Eric came back with like 6 different things. He came back with like a surf guitar part. He came back with 2 layers of drones. He came back with a harmonica part. He came back with a couple other things in there. Andy immediately said, I want to do a spoken word part. Is that okay? And we're like, yeah, go for it.
That whole song is so creepy. I love it. I love it. That harmonica is so sinister.
Before crops, before houses, nomads had raised monoliths in their honor. And now, 12,000 years later, we were listening to the first men to die among them.
The harmonica was the last thing added, too.
Really?
So the other cool thing about the process that I've kind of got running now is, again, send a simple layer to everybody. Let everybody separately. Nobody's heard what the other people are going to do.
Okay.
Everybody's heard that same starting point. So, like, Davis came back with his bass part, but also 2 sets of keyboards. At the same time, Andy came back with his 6 parts and everything. And then what I'll do is I'll kind of bring it all together, edit out where, all right, I'm going to subtract this here and leave this, and kind of make it all fit. Right. It's like a big jigsaw puzzle, and then send it to everybody. And then everybody can kind of go, I dig that. You mind if I add this? Or, hey, what if this, in the case of the Jaunt, I think in addition to harmonica, the other really important thing, excluding Andy's vocals, which are the most important thing, is the piano. Because there's so much electronic noise between the drones and the guitars and just the static and everything else that piano cuts through in such an exceptional way. You needed this sort of analog anchor kind of smack in the middle of it. So Davis came back with pure synthesizers, and I went, you know what, can you take this one, make that just a piano? And he went, okay, and just sent it right back. And Davis is awesome. Like, can you do this? Like, by the next day, I've already got something else back.
Wow.
And then Andy just sent us the thing he was going to do. I forget it. I'm trying to remember if he sent us a written version of it. Maybe not. I think he just sent it. No, he just sent the recording. And as soon as we heard it, we were like, oh, it's incredible.
It is.
Like, it's the way he wove that whole story of the cosmonauts and the Russian dogs in space.
Yeah.
And looking at the stars and counting heartbeats. Yeah.
Oh.
And so it was wonderful science fiction, weird tale woven over something out of the Repo Man soundtrack, and we just loved it. And the only thing I did was there was like a few phrases here and there where I cut a line or two where it was like, yeah, you don't need that. And also it sort of intrudes on where then the keyboard comes in or something else or the drones come in. So if we just shorten that, it's good and send it back to everybody. Everybody's happy. It goes in. And then that layering process, which is something I don't get with the other bands because we're kind of recording in the traditional way.
Yeah.
Adds a whole different thing. And it's been a massive learning experience of like, okay, think in simpler parts that can be layered.
Right.
And I don't know if I'm ever going to go back to the other bands and use that, if this is really just going to be for this project and that's it. But it's been awesome. And one thing I have noticed is the stuff I have been writing for the other bands seems to be more distinct and clear-headed.
Oh, really?
Which is an odd twist.
I wanted to ask if this whole project has changed the way you approached writing for the other bands.
It has, and especially because, I kept writing, especially for Eternal Black, I kept writing stuff. There have been some things I've written for End of Hope.
Yeah.
Where I suddenly found that the ideas were coming faster, but I was also editing them down much quicker and editing them better. But I was also making choices in terms of how it should all flow in a better way.
Okay.
And again, I think that process with Swarm of Flies where you're getting so much creative output from so many different people, and they also can't hear what the other members are giving. That's
the part that I love. The fact that you're getting stuff that's so cohesive from so many different points, and it all works.
It's everybody's different point of view on the song,
but it makes it sound so much different from anything else that you've been working on from what I've heard. Yeah.
And I'm trying to think of like another sort of creative equivalent to it, but it's kind of like doing collage art in a way where, again, it's in the case of the Jaunt, it's Eric and Andy's perception of my simple 3 layers I sent to them, right, plus Davis's perception of those layers, and then me going, that kind of works, this kind of works, this kind of works. Let's slot these in together, see how it sounds, send it back to everybody, and then go from there. And then even Eric going, I think there should be a harmonica here. Okay, go for it. Like go ahead and do it. And so it's really fascinating. It's something that I think only at this time could it have probably have pulled it together.
Oh yeah,
or would have even thought about it, because again, pre-pandemic, my bands are up and running. We're firing on all cylinders. We have a way of working that is really good for us, and so it's getting in the rehearsal room, me bringing in songs, we hash out those songs, and we keep moving. Whereas now there's this sudden different dynamic of thinking about a song, having a general sense of where I want it to go, but not purposefully not completing it,
right,
and leaving only part of the canvas kind of painted in a way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and at that, before the pandemic, I mean, you already had 2 bands. You didn't need a third. So,
Right.
And it also gives the, like you're saying, the room, a band like Swarm of Flies, where people are coming in and out, the cast is always changing. It gives you the opportunity to play in a completely different style that's so different from the other 2 bands.
Absolutely. And the other thing, it's a learning thing for me too. As I said, I started late. So as a guitar player, I've been lucky enough where I took lessons from a guy named Chris Haskett, who played in the Rollins band.
Oh, yeah.
And became a good friend. And Chris was an incredible teacher. And then I took lessons from Bob Balch, who plays in Fu Manchu.
Yeah.
And so I've always been the type of person where I watch somebody and I learn a lot and I try to absorb it and sort of spit it out in my own way.
Okay.
And so especially not being able to go out and play shows and seeing what other bands are doing, or to see my friends who are really good and see how they do it and keep picking up stuff from them. Because like even my friends who were just singers, I watch them because I'm not really a singer. I'm a guitar player. But in Eternal Black, I had to learn my own way into being a frontman. And
right.
The way I did that was watching Eric from Thunderbird Divine, who's a great frontman, or watching Earl from Shadow Witch, who's a great frontman, and kind of seeing what do they do and how does that work for a crowd and all that. So you learn by doing. So in this sense, watching how Earl structures his 3 vocal parts on something.
Yeah.
What a lesson that is.
Yeah.
Or how Eric's brain works in terms of all those disparate, like I'm a kind of meat and potatoes guitar player. I'm pretty much like there's the riff and there's a solo and there's some layering.
Right.
Eric is these disparate ideas pulled together. And so if you listen to the Thunderbird Divine albums, there's a lot of layers in there. There's a lot going on because Eric's an endless source of creative energy. So learning from him on how he does that, learning even from my drummer, Dave Richmond, on like how he played that beat on Mine All Along. It's phenomenal. From the first opening little fill through the whole way through, it has so much groove to it. And just thinking about how he did that and like how many drummers wouldn't, it's not that it's like technically awesome. It's just so locked in a perfect place.
Right.
And so it's just a great learning opportunity for me to drag in all these different people. And like, I don't want to give out names yet, but like some of the other folks I'm going to have playing on some of the songs coming up are again, like folks like, oh yeah, I want to get them doing something on there because I want to see what they'll do. Yeah. And part of it's like, it's a bit like a free throw contest, right? Or like, because it's a bit like how, you shoot from here and then the other person's going to stand back a little farther and shoot from there. And so, you don't know. And so if you've got somebody who's a much better guitar player and you go, okay, see what you can do with this. And they come back with something, you're like, wow, that's really good. It's a great way to learn. Like I'm the eternal student. Yeah. So I'm half the reason I'm doing this is it's going to, I'm going to learn a lot. I'm going to learn a lot more about songwriting. I'm going to learn from these people who I think are kind of masters at what they do. And maybe in that process, we also make some stuff that is really unique. And
for sure. I mean, the 2 songs are fantastic. And you said you've got more in the works. Is there going to be a Swarm of Flies collection, or is it just going to be once a song is done, you're putting it out? That was
another thing where I'm always trying to keep up on technology, and we always have discussions, especially in the 2 music communities I'm in, the punk hardcore community and the stoner doom community, about where is everything going. Right. And this was even before COVID, where in the age of Spotify, and streaming music, it's getting harder and harder for bands. And it's not that those things don't have their value. It's just that if you can't go out and play shows and sell T-shirts or get vinyl out and get people, liking you enough to buy that vinyl, or CDs or whatever it is, you're not going to have income coming in that can then pay for recording more albums and doing other things, and you have to pay out of pocket to do it.
Right.
So the model has really changed. And part of the problem is that everybody's still trying to do it the same way they always used to do it.
Right. Oh, yeah.
So that idea of like, yep, you amass a bunch of songs, you then put out an album. It's not that that's not still the way to do it. It's just that people almost don't listen in that way anymore.
Yeah, it's exactly. I've had this conversation with a lot of people on this show, is that the art of listening to an album from beginning to end is completely lost.
Spotify devalued music quite heavily, not in the way people talk about in that people don't pay for it.
Right.
It's more in that albums were completely thrown out the window and mood became the predominant thing. And if you notice, all their editorial playlists are constructed around mood.
Yeah, yeah.
Not even so much genre. And mood is if you look at their big playlists, are all around mood and things like that. And that's what they try to push you into. And the reason is what they figured out is they've been able to make, and I don't know if you can lay the blame on them, because you could even go back to the iPod and say even the iPod is guilty of this, is shoving music into the background and turning music into a passive activity that is the background to something else.
Okay.
I remember there was a jazz guy who I didn't like the whole book, but he had a book where he was arguing that jazz was great and innovative because other music was essentially armchair music. It was background music. So the pop music of, the 40s and 50s was music that was, meant to be heard in the background while other things were happening. And that jazz required direct interaction and that you couldn't just have it in the background. I think he's kind of full of shit in that assessment.
Okay, yeah.
Because there's plenty of jazz where I just put it on the background and I'm going working and doing. Yeah. But to a certain extent, Spotify, again, even going back to iPods, because the moment you had people, or even you want to go back even further, Discmans, the moment you had people running to music, not actively engaging in music is in service to another activity. You suddenly have music is shoved as a background to something else.
Yeah. Okay, I can see what you're saying there.
A long, slow slide. Yeah. Now you can point to a lot of examples. Well, that's not true because of this, and this. But what Spotify has really done is sped up the process to where most of the time people are listening to something, they're not even sure of the band, they're not even sure of the song. It's just a queue of things sort of coming through.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's something almost to just get your mind off of what you're actually doing. You're not concentrating on either. Like at my job, I sit down at a desk and I put on either music or a podcast. Now, if it's a podcast, it's a little easier for me to concentrate on it because it's spoken word. And that's that rings through a little bit more than singing and music. But at that point, I realized I'm not really paying 100% attention to either one of the things that I'm doing.
Yeah, and I think what happened is in that process of what we thought was a good thing, which was you could have now music anywhere, and you could have all the library of music at your fingertips, and everybody was like, "Whoa, that's amazing!" And then what you realized was it cheapened the value of every single individual thing.
Yeah.
So that then it suddenly became, I got this playlist, and I'm going to listen to that while I'm working. And then how many times do you actually, unless you really hear something that drags you out of it, you'll let 5-6 songs go by without even knowing what you just heard.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And so I think in with all this happening, while you still have good things like Bandcamp, and Bandcamp's been like a savior for a lot of bands. Eternal Black, our entire fan base is built off being able to use, being able to play shows and meet new people at shows and play festivals, but also a lot of Bandcamp and people finding us on Bandcamp and the way Bandcamp works in terms of recommending things to people. That's helped really build the audience for us there.
Oh yeah, I bet.
But Bandcamp is great for like vinyl and shirts and all the other stuff. I don't know how much streaming is happening on Bandcamp. Yeah. And while I'd love to be optimistic that Bandcamp's going to win the day out, it's hard not to look at it and go, yeah, it's just the way people interact with music has changed. And so albums, again, doesn't mean we're not still going to do Eternal Black albums. Doesn't mean we're not still going to do End of Hope albums. That's still the way we're going to approach it. But I'm like, hey, this is something new.
Yeah.
But let's treat some more flies of like, the other thing is I always have this bent of like, man, this is taking too long. And it's my East Coast upbringing where I'm just like, taking too long to get this album done. It's taking too long to get this done, where I'm like, why don't we just put the songs out when you're done? Like, no ramp up, no nothing. Let's just, when the song is done, let's put the fucker out. And I'll work hard to do some press around it. Yeah. And then move on to the next one. And then do the next one again. And then maybe over time we build some mass. My hope is that we can do it in a way where there's no boundaries to what we do, which you've heard the first two songs. I think we've done a pretty good job of covering a wide breadth of territory. So that way people understand the project's not going to be, here's 8 songs that sound exactly the same. Right. That everything's going to be different. And it's great. Like, there are bands that my entire love of them is built on singles, like the Helicopters. Okay, yeah. Where they would basically keep putting out singles until they had enough to do an album and put it out. And that's going back to the James Brown model. Yeah. That's going back, the John Lee Hooker model. So I thought of it as like, hey, we've actually gone backwards to the days of singles. Again, that's another conversation I had recently with somebody else, is that we're actually, while we think we're progressing, we're actually going back to the model of the 50s and the 60s. Oh, yeah. And Spotify and all their communications to artists talk about singles and submitting songs and getting songs on play. They do not talk about albums once. No. Any communication to their artists. Well, they don't want that. No, because again, you can't slot albums in a playlist. Exactly. And Spotify's algorithms benefit from tons of songs queued in a playlist, especially the mood playlist. So they don't want albums. They don't want to promote albums unless it's somebody really, really big. Exactly. And I think they did put out something to the artists that said, if you want to make money on Spotify, just make more music. Well, yeah, he's a dipshit. Yeah. He came out and basically said, well, it's these morons who think they can just keep waiting 4 years to make an album. Yeah. And of course, everybody went after him like they should have, because it was a stupid ass thing to say. Absolutely. He's also saying it from the vantage point of what he sees working for Spotify and what they're trying to drive people to. Yep. So again, I like making albums. When you complimented me on the Eternal Black album, that means a lot to me, because I busted my ass to make sure the flow of that album, even the flow of those 2 songs together, like, that was really important to me. And I put a lot of thought into how that would go. Well, it shows for sure. Yeah. So, but with Swarm of Flies, I'm like, okay, this is all new. Yeah. Like, strip away all the things I would have done in the other bands, and okay, all right, let's put the songs out when they're ready to go. Maybe somebody comes along and says, hey, we think this is cool, we want to do an album. I'll say, great, as soon as I have 10 songs, I'll give it to you, and we'll go. Or maybe, do you guys want to do 7 inches, which I would love. That would be cool. That would be cool. Like that, I would love to do 7 inches for, like, to do the tunes together back to back. Because again, I have so many James Brown singles, that are like, like I have the Escapism Part 1, Part 2. Yep. Set. Yep. And so it's great. It's like it fades out, side one comes right back in on the groove, and you're like, oh, it's so great. And so it's like, and again, the other thing is with these songs, like, I'm not writing epics. I'm not doing 8 or 11-minute songs. Like, I'm trying to do a bit of songcraft of, you should be able to get the idea across in under 5 minutes. Yeah, and it's fantastic. It keeps it nice and tight. Yeah. When do you think there might be the third Swarm of Flies track coming out? There'll probably be 2 right on the heels. I'm trying to do 1 a month. Oh, cool. So technically I'm a little late. But that has to do with, again, there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of folks involved. But yeah, there's 2 that are close to being done. And my goal was to keep doing them 1 a month through the end of the year. And then if we have a vaccine, maybe this goes by the wayside. If we don't, and the winter is looking like we're stuck in pandemic hell, I'm going to keep making music, and I'm going to keep reaching out to folks and seeing who else I can drag into it. Oh, man. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing that. So where can everybody find Swarm of Flies? How can they keep in touch with the band, follow what you're doing, either with Swarm of Flies, with Eternal Black, with End of Hope? I mean, Bandcamp for everything is usually the best place. So swarmofflies.bandcamp.com. Eternal Black is eternalblack.bandcamp.com, and End of Hope is endofhope.bandcamp.com. We're also on, everything's on Facebook.
Okay.
Instagram as well, except for Swarm Flies. We don't have an Instagram account because we're not touring.
Right.
It's not that type of band. So I just have my account on Instagram. But
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I've kept you for about an hour at this point. I want to thank you so much for spending all this time with me, man. It's been blast. Learning how this stuff comes together is it was fascinating.
Thanks, Mark. I can't thank you enough, man. I really appreciate it.
Turkey, 1958. I've got headphones on and a counter in my hand. Back in 51, Howard Hawks said, "Watch the skies," but it was our job to listen to them. It was fitting in a way, because 250 miles east and 12,000 years before, men had raised stones to mark the stars' path. Before ceramics, before crops, before houses, nomads had raised monoliths in their honor. And now, 12,000 years later, we were listening to the first men to die among them.